The 619th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the aisles. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play, stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony here with you guys on a Thursday night, a Thanksgiving night. And we hope that everyone has had a great holiday, spent time with their family and with their friends. Unfortunately, it was not a great time watching Carolina play basketball as they get beat by Michigan State 74-58. The Fort Myers tip-off, the first loss of the season for Carolina, and we're here to talk about it. We'll take a look at the box score. We'll deliver you a quote from head coach Hubert Davis, stat of the game, thoughts, takeaways, discussion topic, and so much more. A lot to unpack here. We're not a podcast that overreacts to a loss in November. I think we pride ourselves on doing that. With that being said, if you want to be alarmed, concerned, frustrated, I think that's okay, because that's kind of where I am with watching the way Carolina not only lost today, but the way that they got beat. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. As I mentioned, the Heels lose 74-58, and this was a game that was a lot more closer than the final score should and does suggest. But in some aspects, Carolina was never really, I don't think, a threat to win the game the majority of the second half. And Carolina actually led 22-15 at the under 8 timeout in the first half. And after that point, Michigan State went on a 13-0 run and never looked back on their way to a win. As close as Carolina had it in the second half was 55-52 at the under 8 timeout with like 7:49 to go. I think was the exact time left on the clock. Carolina was outscored 19-6 the rest of the way to end the game. And this is a game that Carolina shot just 17% from behind the three-point line. They allowed 46 points in the painted area. They got bodied on the glass. They lost the rebounding margin overall. I thought Michigan State, from the opening tip until the final whistle, I thought they were the tougher team, the more disciplined team. And I want to stress this. Michigan State's good. Michigan State's really good. This is now their third win in 3 weeks over a ranked opponent. They've beaten an Arkansas team that is beating Duke right now. They beat a Kentucky team that Carolina will face on Tuesday night in Lexington, and now they beat Carolina. So I don't want to discredit what Michigan State did, and they deserve a lot of credit for the way the result went. A lot of this, though, to me, felt self-inflicted by Carolina. I thought a lot of it was poor shot selection. 5 of Carolina's first 17 shots were from behind the three-point line. 16 of their next 34 over a span of the next 22 minutes came from behind the three-point line. On a night where, they only shot 17% from behind the three. Transition defense, the first handful of minutes in the game, nowhere to be found. Getting a body on someone when a shot went up, nowhere to be found. The good news is that a lot of this stuff is correctable. And, Hubert Davis expressed that was his excitement going into the film, was that to see what he could really show the guys. I guess just wasn't expecting a performance like this a week after you have a team meeting to address the way you closed out a game at home against Navy. You had a chance to send a message. You had a chance to cement yourself as a legitimate threat and contender in your conference and nationally, and not to say that you still can't do that with the win on Tuesday at Kentucky, a win over Georgetown next Sunday at home, whatever. But we've seen Carolina play in these types of games around this holiday, and for the last handful of years, they've lost them. And as a fan, I'm tired of losing these games. I love playing in them. I love the energy that was in the arena. I'd love to know what the TV number did playing on Big Fox. I love all that. But I'm tired of losing these games. And it hurts even more to see Tom Izzo, that smug, arrogant SOB, ruin my favorite holiday because I didn't feel like my team was ready to meet the fight that Michigan State brought to us for 40 minutes.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it, or it seemed like it early in the game. It seemed like Carolina was ready for that fight. They weren't rebounding well, but they still were able to score the basketball at a pretty decent rate. And you thought, okay, here we go. Carolina's going to be fine in this game. They're going to be able to compete with this team. And at the least, this was going to be a close game. I think the final score was about as indicative as anything else that, this game really wasn't all that close in the second half. I thought once Michigan State settled into that second half, they really took over. And when it mattered most, they were able to outscore Carolina. So, I think, there are a lot of reasons as to why Carolina struggled in this game, but I think the lack of toughness from this group in this one definitely was a big part of it. I think there definitely are some shooting issues that we have to get into at this point. I think there are a lot of people that don't want to admit it, but this is not a good shooting team. We are at that point where we have to start having that conversation. And, the thing for me is that, even with as bad as they performed tonight, I don't think the season is in peril by any stretch of the imagination. I think that this is a really good Michigan State team. I think this is one of the better teams in the country. I think their rankings should reflect that. But I just, to be honest with you, I thought Carolina was going to put up more of a fight, especially with their two big guys inside. And I think there were moments where those guys did everything that they could, but they couldn't get the help around them. And that's where I think you really saw tonight that you miss Seth Trimble out there. Yeah, part of it is the depth that you miss, but also the guy that can just put pressure on the rim in a half-court situation. And you do not have that right now. That's very clear. That's the reason why Carolina was having to take some of the shots that they were taking during that one stretch for Michigan State where they went on a 13-0 run. We saw it as the game, continued, that Carolina's shot selection still wasn't really all that great. And that's part of the reason why they sit here after this game, losing by 16 and asking themselves what exactly went wrong as they head back to Chapel Hill.
Yeah, look, I think it's important to state, is the season in peril after tonight? No. Are the concerns that come out of this game threatening derailing this season? 100%. Because you have to get more from guys that you're asking a lot of. I can try to turn it and twist it as much as I want. And Kyan Evans tonight was as big a liability as any player on the floor, and he's your point guard. Luka Bogovac has not looked like the player that Carolina brought in over the summer. Has yet to look like the guy that we clearly needed, that we went out and got. That guy that looked like the player he looked like in the Adriatic League, hasn't seen that guy show up yet in 7 games so far for Carolina. And the most concerning thing, and this will adjust a little bit whenever Seth Trimble gets back, there's no depth on this roster. For a 5th straight year, you don't really have any guy off the bench that you're really confident and comfortable in that can help win games and help change the outcome of games. He played James Brown, the first guy off the bench, over Zayden High. Mm-hmm. And my thoughts about Zayden personally and on this basketball team, I made those known over the summer. It's not something I would have done, but that was not my decision. Hubert Davis decided to bring him back. But, he goes to James Brown tonight, who for 3 minutes didn't do anything on the floor remotely to what he should have done. Looked as lost as anybody on the basketball court we've seen so far this season. And so if none of this stuff gets addressed and corrected, then no, it can derail the season in terms of where we put the ceiling at. I still think they've got a really solid floor, but solid floor isn't what we're about here. It's not what we do here. What we do here is when we were talking about that ceiling. And I'm not saying I'm taking a step back from where I thought their ceiling could be, because I've seen them play at a level that suggests what their ceiling is, which is a second weekend of the tournament, Elite 8, Final Four type of team. But if we're being honest, we've seen that for spurts. It's been really a half or two. It's not been for sustained first and second half play. And the fact of the matter is teams like Michigan State, it seems like Michigan, some other teams around the country, they've been able to do that here in the first 3 weeks of the season, while Carolina has failed to do so. Let's jump into the box score. Carolina shoots 38% from the field, including not making a field goal the last 4 minutes and 15 seconds. They were 21 of 55. On the flip side, Michigan State, 31 of 60. They shot 52%. As I mentioned in the open there, Carolina just 4 of 23 from 3 for 17% shooting. Michigan State just they were 5 of 10, so just much more efficient. And I put that in the article. Michigan State was just efficient at everything that they wanted to do as compared to the Heels. Carolina 12 of 17 from the foul line, so 71% shooting there. Michigan State 7 of 9 from the foul line for a 78% clip. Carolina didn't turn it over, just 8 turnovers in the game, led to 7 points for Michigan State. Carolina forces 10 turnovers, but scored just 7 points off of them. And then this is where it kind of starts to get ugly. Carolina out-rebounded 37-30, 25-18 on the defensive glass. Both teams had 12 offensive rebounds. The difference, only 6 second chance points for Carolina off those 12 offensive rebounds. Michigan State got 12 second chance points for their 12 offensive rebounds. Bench points 20-5 in favor of Michigan State. Points in the paint 46-34 in favor of Michigan State. Fast break points 16-11 in favor of Carolina. Blocks 4-2 in favor of Michigan State. Steals 5-2 in favor of Carolina. But the Heels had just 9 assists on 21 made baskets. Michigan State 14 assists on their 31 made baskets. There were 10 lead changes in the game. And Carolina led, though, just for 8 minutes and 14 seconds. We'll now get into the quote of the game from head coach Hubert Davis. I'll read that to you guys. This was, I think, his first answer to the public media session with reporters that were at the game. Hubert said, quote, "I want to watch this game over again. I would say initially, just from a defensive standpoint, being able to play at that high level and be able to sustain it, As I said before, going into the game, percentage-wise, defensively, we were top 10, and we allowed them to shoot 51% from the field. That just can't happen. 46 points in the paint, it just doesn't work, end quote. And probably my biggest complaint, my most vocal frustration in the first half, and I'll admit, for a game in November, pretty animated, pretty vocal, pretty frustrated with the way Carolina played. I thought Carolina's initial defense was good. Not great, good. The problem was that when they forced to miss shots, one, they either just didn't rebound the ball. I mean, this is the most I've watched them stand and look at the ball all year. For the most part, when the ball's gone up, they've boxed out, they've got a hand on somebody, they're getting in position for rebound. Today, they were just sitting there, lost in la-la land. I don't know if they were thinking about their Thanksgiving meal after the game. I don't know. Hopefully their turkey was cold, because by God, they would have practiced after the way they played today instead of going to eat. But they just didn't rebound the ball. And so Michigan State, it felt like it got every loose ball, every 50-50 ball, and then they were able to just get easy points at the rim. And that's something we haven't seen from this team all year. And so I don't know what to chalk that up to, but, Hubert's right. They just didn't sustain it. It was there from the time the ball went up, but it was like you got to complete the play. It's like in football when a defensive coordinator draws up the perfect play, the perfect coverage, the perfect blitz, but the defensive back doesn't make the play on the ball. The linebacker doesn't make the tackle. The defensive lineman doesn't make the sack. None of what happens prior to that moment really matters. It's about what happens when it's there to make the play. And I thought in the first half, Carolina just simply, for me, I thought it was a toughness thing. I thought they just got bodied.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think in the moment. I thought Henry Vassar did not play for the extended part of the first half because I thought he just didn't play tough. It caught by me. He had 2 fouls. I thought Hubert Davis benched him because I thought he was just playing soft, which he was. And I think that's something that's correctable. But we hadn't seen that show up through the first 6 games, and that kind of leaves me sitting here scratching what little hair I have left on top of my head, wondering why it showed up today the way that it did.
Yeah, I mean, it is a mystery. I mean, you go back to that first half, and 9 offensive rebounds for Michigan State, and it turns into 8 second chance points. So even in those moments, for the most part, Carolina did a pretty decent job of limiting the points off of the offensive rebounds that they were getting. I mean, you're scoring less than a point off of those offensive rebounds. So, the effort I thought was there on the defensive end of the floor, but it wasn't there in rebounding. It didn't look like there were moments where Carolina was hungry enough to go get the rebound on the defensive end of the floor. And you're right. I thought the same thing with Henry Vassar. I thought he was a guy that just went to the bench because Hubert Davis was looking at the way he was playing in that first half and saw that he was struggling. I mean, he had just 1 rebound in that first half on the defensive end of the floor, 1 rebound total from him in that first half. Now, he only played 11 minutes, but that certainly is not what you would expect from Henry Vassar, the way that he has been playing to start out the season. So I thought that was definitely something that left you really disappointed in this group. And it just, towards the end of the game, you saw it just never really got better. And some shots for Michigan State really started falling. But what was concerning was not even the rebounding, really. Carolina got beat on the glass in the first half where they were never really able to recover. And part of that was that Michigan State just started making shots. But the other thing was Carolina was allowing a lot of easy stuff at the rim. And that was something that we haven't seen all year long, where Carolina, we talked about in the, when we were previewing this game, we talked about being able to alter the shots that Michigan State was going to be throwing up. And for the most part today, Carolina was not able to do that. Now, there's one play, that I think sticks out in a lot of people's minds probably. The shot by Jeremy Fears over Henry Vassar. that's one where you contested the shot. There's nothing you can do. There were a few shots like that throughout the day where shots were just being made by a good basketball team. But when you're allowing some of the easy looks that Carson Cooper was getting on the interior, those are things that are preventable for Carolina, and they just didn't do it. And then, the other shocking thing to me in the first half was their transition defense. I thought their transition defense in the first half was absolutely awful. I thought there were moments, you have the 1-3 from Jackson Kohler. It comes down the floor. I mean, literally nobody picks him up. Nobody looks at the trailer and thinks we need to try to close out on this guy. He's just standing there wide open, knocks down an easy three. That was that. And then, a couple other times, Cohen Carr able to run the court, finish with an easy dunk. They had another easy look right at the rim because Carolina doesn't end up getting back. I mean, those are the things that you think, Carolina should be able to do pretty easily because it's just an effort thing. And I thought in that first half, the effort wasn't good enough from Carolina. It got better in the second half in terms of the effort. I didn't question that the effort was there. But by that point, you were a team that was just in so much disarray on the offensive end of the floor that it didn't really matter what you were doing on the defensive end of the floor. It just wasn't enough to be able to overcome this Michigan State team.
All right, stat of the game. I wrote down points in the paint. Carolina scored 34, so 34 of the 58 came in the painted area. Not bad. But what do you expect when you can't shoot the ball? Michigan State, 46 of their 74 points came in the paint. 46. And the difference and why that was allowed and why that was possible, Jeremy Fears Jr., first off, what a point guard he is.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly fun to watch, tough as nails, gritty, a prototypical Michigan State point guard. Think back to, Cassius Winston, some of the other guys that have come through that program under Izzo. But they got that because there was just a relentless pressure on the rim and a desire to get the ball inside. It was a lot of what Carolina had done the first handful of games, which now, granted, they haven't pressured the rim with their guards, but Wilson and Vassar have just been able to get the ball in the block, go to work, score, foul, what have you. And, tonight, I think part of it, I think Michigan State had a great game plan. First time Carolina's been matched up with a team that had the size to handle both of their bigs. And there were times where Wilson and Vassar got the better of them. Just wasn't consistent enough. But this felt like last year. This felt like what you're used to seeing from Carolina in November, where they can't contain the ball. And last year against Michigan State in a game that went to overtime, where you gave up 94, you gave up 50 points in the paint in that game. Okay, well, that's 45 minutes, high-scoring game, what have you. This is a 40-minute game, nowhere near as high-scoring. You give up 46. And as much as we can say, we don't have our best perimeter defender, which we don't, Carolina hadn't been carved up like that inside all year. We're talking about a game against Kansas where you were plus 28 points in the paint. And I know people were trying to devalue that Kansas win, but they just went through the Players Era Festival without their best player and won 3 tough games in 3 days. So you were in that game, you were able to take away the paint. You were able to take away driving lanes, all that. Tonight you weren't able to do so. And it was the first thing Hubert said to Jones Angell in his postgame when he looked at the box score, said 46 points in the paint, can't have that. You heard that there in the quote of the game. So definitely probably the biggest point of emphasis, as I mentioned, once Carolina gets back home tomorrow and they start to, evaluate the film and start to get ready for Kentucky. Let's go ahead and get into the takeaway portion of tonight's live broadcast. We want to thank everyone that's joining us live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Want to wish all of them a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you had a wonderful time with your family and your friends. And we appreciate you being here with us as we talk through the first loss of Carolina's season, a loss that denied the UNC a 7-0 start. Last time Carolina started 7-0 was the last time they won the national championship. Let's go and get right to it, kind of following up Jeremy Fears. It really starts with the fact that, we talked about in the preview, Carolina's combination of Evans and Derek Dixon had to kind of even out what Fears did. And we told you it was going to be a tough challenge. That kid's averaging a double-double and the college level with points and assists. You don't see that a whole lot anymore. But that's what he's doing. And I thought tonight he was the best player on the floor, 19-7, 8 of 10 shooting. The biggest concern that I came away from this is around Kyan Evans. And my dear buddy, Myron Goodman, who told me this after the St. Bonaventure game, comment saying, finally Josh sees the light. Evans, I told you he was concerned against St. Bonaventure, and this team is not physical. Didn't look more comfortable against the physical Spartans than Evans did. Yeah, Kyan Evans cannot continue to play the way that he's playing and this team be successful. Just 4 points tonight in 33 minutes, 1 of 7 shooting, 0 of 5 from 3, 2 assists, 2 turnovers. We've been able to praise him and look past some of the issues offensively as a scorer because he's done such a great job distributing, and I don't want to devalue that, because there is value, obviously, in creating for your teammates to put the ball in the basket. But that's not why he was brought here to play. He was brought here to be a scorer. He's a scoring guard. Hubert Davis, I think, wants scoring guards to play with one another. And once Seth Trimble got injured, that should have upped the aggression level for him to start to become much more of an offensive scorer as opposed to being reserved to a playmaker, and we haven't seen that switch. There's no one else in Carolina's starting 5 that can consistently put pressure on the rim. Part of it's because you're playing Jaren Stevenson out of position, but it's still the best 3-man that Carolina has to offer right now. And Luka Bogovac, I don't think is even concerned about getting to the rim. I think if he gets a transition layup, that's great. I think he's a lot more comfortable living in the mid-range and outside the three-point line. I think he is adapting to the physical nature of the American game. And I'm not saying that the skill level at the ACC level is better than the Adriatic League. I could argue that games against Kansas, Michigan State, Kentucky are a lot more physical than what he saw overseas. And that's just the nature of the way that game is played. When you watch the overseas player, when they come overseas, what do we always talk about? How will they handle the physicality? Because the game isn't as free-flowing as it is over there. But Kyan Evans has to be better. I'm not going as far to say that he's a bust, but it's a concern right now, I do think, for Carolina. And the fact that when there was 4 minutes left to go in the game and Hubert Davis had Derek Dixon on the floor, a freshman, who, by the way, was not good tonight either. Derek Dixon played 8 minutes, didn't score a single point. Had a rebound, an assist, a foul, and a turnover. That, to me, I thought was mind-blowing. I thought it was very telling. Now, he did re-enter with 2.5 minutes to go, but with the fact that you were down the whole second half, you would think you'd have your point guard on the floor the majority of the game, and there was a stretch there when the game was still in the balance where that was not the case. I still believe in what Evans can be and what Evans was brought here to do. But at some point, man, I think there's got to be an adjustment to his mindset to where we need him until Trimble gets back. We need him to be attacking and looking to score as opposed to looking to pass.
Well, I mean, you just want to see a more aggressive nature from him when it comes to getting to the basket in general. He's a guy that seems like he's got the quickness to be able to turn the corner on guys, but you just don't see it. And that's the thing to me that's crazy, is that he just does not want to get to the basket. He is so comfortable with taking shots from the outside. He is so comfortable with just being a guy that's passing the ball to somebody else and allowing them to do, everything to try to create on the offensive end of the floor, where, you want him to be able to, be the one getting downhill, drawing that second defender. And then from there, being able to pass out and create some of those looks that Carolina needs from beyond the arc. Because, when you're not able to do that, you get a performance much like tonight. That was the reason why Carolina wasn't able to really do anything offensively from beyond the arc, was because they weren't getting good looks from out there. I mean, there were a few good looks that they got that should have gone down. There's no question about that. Kyan Evans is certainly a guy that had a couple of those himself. But at the same time, I mean, you're not getting to the lane to be able to draw that extra defender and creating some of those mismatches on the perimeter that you need to create in order to make a bunch of shots from out there. And that's what Carolina was looking to do tonight for some reason. I don't really know why, but yeah, it's hard when you don't have someone that with Seth Trimble's ability to put pressure on the rim in the half court. As you said, that is something that we have seen at times from Luka, mainly in transition, but he's a guy that is so well-versed in the mid-range and perimeter shooting that, that's really the area that he just chooses to live in. I don't love it because I think that he has the ability to attack the rim. We've seen it at times this year where he does a good job of attacking and passing. But the other thing is when he does attack, there are times where we simply just need you to score. The other thing is that when Carolina did attack the basket, and Kyan Evans was a big part of this as well, they would have guys that would get downhill. They'd miss easy layups. I mean, they were 10 of 20 on layups in this game. It's got to be better. I mean, you've got to be able to finish those easy looks on the inside when you get there, because that's what's really going to sustain runs for you if you're Carolina, not banking on your perimeter shooting to be able to sustain everything. And, that's the thing, is that you can count on these guys down low as much as you want to. I mean, you got 31 points from those guys tonight. And you could say, well, that's not good enough. We need more from those guys. Yeah, in a game like this, you'd probably like a little bit more from those guys. But at the same time, they can't carry you in every single game, especially against good competition like this, where, they were matched up against two really good defensive bigs in Carson Cooper and Jackson Kohler. I mean, this is a really good defensive basketball team for Michigan State, but still, you needed someone else to help him out. You were hoping that Kyan Evans was going to be that guy, because I still stick by it. The St. Bonaventure game, I thought he played well. I thought the shots that he hit from the outside were big. It was just in this game, those shots were not falling. You're going up against a much better defensive team. That's certainly part of it. But I do think that you are hoping for more consistency, really, is what you're looking for from Kyan Evans. I don't need you to produce, this isn't a guy that we need to be producing 17 and 7. We don't need you to be at that rate. I mean, it'd be lovely if you could be. But at the same time, we're just asking for, can you give us a little bit more consistent offensive pressure on the rim? Could you just be able to score at a consistent rate for Carolina? Like, is this a guy that you could trust can just get you, double figures just about every night that you're on the floor? I mean, if you could get that from that point guard position, I feel like you would feel like there's a good chance you'd be able to win just about every game. But tonight's performance from him, not going to cut it. And you're right. It was telling that late in the game, they had Derek Dixon in there. Part of it may have been that they just couldn't get a stoppage to be able to get Kyan Evans back into the game. But still, when you're putting Derek Dixon into the game as late as they did, I think it shows you. And with Derek Dixon, wasn't a great night from him, but I'll tell you, he was the only guy on the team that had a positive plus-minus in this game. He was +2 as opposed to Kyan Evans, who was -24. And look, plus-minus, again, isn't everything. But that when you have that big of a difference, it certainly is notable. I mean, a 26-point differential in terms of the success that your team had when you were on the floor. That's a tough night for Kyan Evans, and he's got to be better than that moving forward.
Another area that I think it's alarming and concerning, and it's correctable, but after a 7-game sample size, you really start to wonder. Dog, this team can't shoot.
Yeah.
And I looked at this roster back in June, July, and it's like, top to bottom, this might be the best shooting team Hubert Davis has assembled. Like, as you went and assembled snipers, man. Jonathan Powell, 38% shooting at West Virginia last year. What Kyan Evans did for Colorado State, what Luka Bogovac did in a pro league overseas, what Jared Stevenson could be in a much more defined role. Jaden Young, all these other guys that I looked at here and I thought the guys that shot well at their previous stop, I thought it would translate, and the guys that didn't shoot well, I think would elevate their shooting because they'll be surrounded by better talent. And what's really just mind-boggling to me is you've got two trees inside that are getting just about whatever they want whenever they want it. I mean, Henry Vassar started the game tonight 7 straight points. Caleb Wilson scored 10 of Carolina's first 14. Then kind of got quiet, but regardless, like those two guys are walking buckets. It feels like for Carolina, which means the defense is collapsing. And why? Like, I think it's okay to say this now. As much as their shot selection tonight irritated me and frustrated me, they've generated good look after good look, and I've said good shot, good miss, good shot, good miss, good shot, good miss. You can only say that so long before those misses got to become makes, because you're running effective sets, your screens are doing what you need to do, you're freeing up shooters, so on and so forth. None of that crap matters if the ball doesn't go through the hoop. And I just didn't understand tonight. You build a touchdown lead because you're putting the ball inside. You're playing through Wilson, as I mentioned. You're taking the threes that need to be taken, but you're not forcing it. And then you go through a stretch where literally all but half of your shots are behind the 3-point line, and you ain't making them. And it never felt like up until 2 minutes to go, you didn't have to try to get it all back. And it felt like Luka Bogovac felt like, I got to get something here. Mm-hmm. I thought his shot selection tonight was pathetic. And if Carolina was at full strength, I would not have played him as much as he would have played tonight, because I thought he did not have a feel for the game, and I thought he was forcing things. But our good buddy Greg Ward chimes in. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Greg. I counted 7 wide open 3-point shots. We made 2 of them. Like, yeah, bro, Carolina's getting wide open looks. You're getting looks that North Carolina basketball players should make more often than not. Mm. And now, like, this is part of the NIL world, revenue sharing world. We're now paying you to make shots. Like, your job is to put the ball in the basket. That's what we handed you a $2 million check for. That's what you got that cheddar for. And you're not doing your job. And again, like, this is correctable. This is something that we can revisit in a week and say maybe we overreacted. But 7 games is, I think, a fair enough sample size. And that sample size suggests, with the looks that they're generating and everything like that, this is not a good shooting team. And it starts with Kyan Evans all the way down to Jonathan Powell, who I love his defensive effort tonight. I loved his energy. He got to the boards. But your biggest impact is your ability to shoot the ball. I need you to, if you're going to play 23 minutes, which maybe he's the guy that should be playing more often, I need you taking more than 3 threes. I need you to be aggressive. And there just seems to be attentiveness with some guys and their 3-point shooting, and some guys, Luka Bogovac, that are forcing it while not going down at 3, that they're putting the ball up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's crazy to me is that for the season, they're kind of middle of the road. Because they shoot 34% from beyond the arc. That was at least coming into tonight's game. That number will go down after the performance that they had. But, I mean, still, that's just not good enough. We thought that was going to be a number that was going to be a little bit higher, somewhere in that, 37, 38 percentage range. But you haven't seen that this year. And tonight was the worst that you've looked shooting the ball from beyond the arc. And I think that part of it is that you're facing a really good defensive team in Michigan State. But the other part of it is that, guys were not knocking down some easy looks. And it feels like there have been games this year. You go back to the game against Kansas. First half, Carolina not knocking down shots from the outside. Looked a lot like some of the shots that Carolina took in the first half of this game. But as the game went along, they were starting to hit some of the good looks that they had from the outside, as well as some of the tough looks that they had from the outside. Never got going tonight for Carolina. Never clicked. And I think, as you said, Luka Bogovac had a really bad feel for the game tonight, because in that first half, he basically took Carolina out of the half-court offense that they were succeeding in, which was getting the ball inside, driving the basket. We saw, it was trying to get the ball to Henry Vassar. And then, Caleb Wilson and Jaron Stevenson putting the ball on the floor and getting to the basket, or, just giving Caleb a good look on the inside and him finishing strong with a dunk. We saw that mindset in the first, half of the first half. But all of a sudden, when things started to slow down was when Luka Bogovac had the ball in his hands and was trying to shoot a lot of threes. And that really took Carolina's offense out of rhythm. It felt like they were never really able to reestablish it because, they were looking for a lot of shots from beyond the arc that just weren't falling. But, you're at a point now where you got to just be tough enough to make some of these shots. And, you can point to Powell as the guy. To me, it's Luka. We brought you over for a reason. We thought that was one of the main things that you were going to bring to this team, was going to be the outside shooting. You go back and you look at when we were at the blue-white scrimmage and we talked about the effect that he was going to have on the team. That was the thing that we thought he was going to do best for Carolina. It was the reason why we thought he was going to set the table so well in the half court for Carolina, was because you needed a guy that could really just make threes from the outside at a pretty strong clip. And right now, you don't have that guy. That guy doesn't exist on this roster. And I'm going to tell you, when Seth Trimble comes back, he is not that dude. That is not his game. Now, he's a guy that can shoot the three well at times, but he's a guy that's there to attack the rim, get downhill, get to the foul line, if he needs to. That's what his game is. And so you need some of these shooters that you went out and got to really play better. And I that's where I look to Luka and want to see him step up. And Jaron Stevenson also. This was something that you did at Alabama. I know that you didn't shoot a high percentage there either, but we were hoping that you would shoot a higher percentage here for Carolina, and that you would be a threat offensively on that end of the floor. There were times tonight where he wasn't a threat on either end of the floor because he didn't have a great night defensively. He had trouble staying in front of Cohen Carr. And then, he on the offensive end of the floor, he really wasn't bringing you much either. So, at times you were wondering to yourself, what exactly is he bringing to the table? And that's why I think you saw Jonathan Powell out there as much as you saw him, was because Jaron Stevenson just wasn't really bringing a whole lot for Carolina. So, they need somebody that can knock down threes. You're talking about four made threes, and one of them was Henry Vassar literally just throwing one up and it went down. So outside of that, you had 3 shots that went down that were just normal shooting rhythm for Carolina. It's got to be better, man, if you're going to find a way to win big games like this. Like, that's the thing. You can continue to shoot as poorly as you are and beat the teams that you are supposed to beat. But when it comes to these toss-up games, when it comes to these games against good opponents, you're going to have to make more threes. It's going to have to look a lot more like what it looked like against Kansas, or else you're not going to win a lot of those games.
All right, the last takeaway I have, and then we'll get to tonight's discussion topic, is something I alluded to at the beginning, and I don't think you're going to argue. Until Seth Trimble returns, this roster has no depth. Jonathan Powell played 23 minutes off the bench. The next highest reserve minutes-wise was Derek Dixon at 8. James Brown played 7. And Zayden High played 4. Didn't see, Jaden Young tonight in this ball game. No Isaiah Dennis tonight in this ball game. I have no issue with Jonathan Powell playing 23 minutes. I think Jonathan Powell is a guy that should play, 18 plus minutes a night because of what he can provide for you as a scorer. But I also think he does bring a lot of energy. I think he competes defensively, gets to the board. There's an edge with him that I like, that I appreciate. I have no issue with that. You scored 5 bench points total. And that was, from Powell. And then Zayden High, I think it was I think he scored a bucket that I'm still not sure why he took the shot that he took, but thank God it went through the bottom of the net. James Brown is still probably a year away from being a legitimate big man that can play. He had a 3-minute stretch where everything he did was wrong. And they use him in drop coverage, and I don't think he understands. Every time he drops back into coverage, he's giving up too much ground between the ball and him, and he's just giving easy points up at the rim. One time he didn't find a man in transition defense, on and on and on. He doesn't need to play. Problem is I don't think Zayden High needs to play either. And that's your only other option because, Ivan Matlakovich, that guy must have really wanted to be a Tar Heel, man, because he is not going to see the floor except when it's Biscuit Boy time and we're putting in Blue Steel and we're either trying to get biscuits or we're just beating the crap out of someone that we're going to put those guys in. And the bigger concern is this doesn't even attempt to get fixed until you get Seth Trimble back, and then you figure out who you're sending to the bench. Now, in my mind, you send Jaren Stevenson to the bench, and he in there lies your backup 5-man. He becomes the guy that can replace Wilson. He becomes the guy that plays that can replace Vassar because he's playing out of position at the 3. You saw that today. He had nothing for Cohen Carr. And Cohen Carr is a great athlete. Not taken away from what Cohen Carr is, but he should not have been able to get by the 3-minute at Carolina the way he was able to just blow by Jaren Stevenson. So, and best case scenario for Trimble, best case is the week of Christmas. That's best case scenario from the timeline of the injury to when he suffered it. Now, he can sit here and say he's a fast healer and he's going to be back beforehand. And after tonight, I think we're all hoping that's the case. But even then, you have 8 guys that you would feel comfortable playing, and your 3 guys coming off the bench are freshman Derek Dixon, and then Jaren Stevenson and Jonathan Powell. I think it's just, and part of it's that you're compromised because of injury. But I looked at this roster and thought there would not be an issue with depth. There shouldn't be an issue with depth. I thought this was a roster that would be easy to identify a rotation and carve out how you're going to utilize your bench players. And then it feels like, again, that's not the case. And that's really frustrating, man, because a lot of this stuff needs to be ironed out. That's why you play these games. But it needs to be ironed out by the time you get into conference play. But I'm not sure by the time we get to conference play, this will be a defined rotation. And there will be guys on the bench that emerge as people that Hubert Davis can point to and count every single time they step on the floor. They're going to impact winning the way that they should.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen this year because I think you will get to a point in the season where you will probably play with 7, and that's it. Maybe 8 because Derek Dixon is still going to have a role because of the position that he plays, because Kyan Evans is not good enough to be able to play nearly as many minutes as I think we thought he would be able to play. I mean, he played 33 minutes in this game, and even that felt like too much because there were moments where you wish that you had somebody that could come off the bench and give you a little time to settle him down and get his head back into the game the way that it needed to be. Derek Dixon, I think, is going to be a part of the rotation. Jonathan Powell, because the effort will be a part of the rotation. And then whichever guy goes to the bench, which, as you said, I think will be Jaren Stevenson, and he will be that backup 5. I think Zayden High and James Brown bring you nothing, especially James Brown. James Brown is not a year away from being able to play. James Brown is a year away from being a year away. he is not going to play at a high level with this basketball team. It's not going to happen. Not offensively. He's not going to bring anything because he didn't bring anything tonight on that end. Defensively, I think he's an incredible liability for Carolina out there. I just don't see what value he really brings for the Tar Heels. And to be honest with you, I didn't really understand why he was in the game. I get that Zayden High is a little bit out of control in terms of some of the way that he plays on the floor, but I think he is definitely a guy that brings more than James Brown brings. I think there is some upside to his game where I just don't feel like there's anything there for James Brown at this point. You saw with Zayden High 2 offensive rebounds that were, big for Carolina. I don't remember if those resulted in baskets or not, but they were certainly important offensive rebounds for the team at the time to give them extra possession. So, he's a guy that can chip in from time to time, but I don't feel confident that he's going to be there for Carolina once you get later into the season. You see already they're thinning down the bench in these games that they play against high-end competition. They did it against Kansas, and they did it again tonight where they played 9 in this game. And I think they played 9 in the game against Kansas. It might have been 8 in the game against the Jayhawks. They know that in these important games, the bench is going to have to be shorter. But I do not think they thought that the bench would be necessarily this thin for this season. And, hopefully with, Jaren Stevenson going to the bench, he'll be a guy that can provide some nice bench production, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. That's the reason why maybe having Luka Bogovac go to the bench could help you, is because if you have him coming off your bench, you've got a guy that can at least score the basketball at times. Now, he's going to have to do a much better job. He's going to have to be more efficient than he was tonight in that role, and maybe coming off the bench would allow him to do that, but I don't think that's the way that they're going to end up going. So I don't think you're ever going to see that scoring punch off of the bench. You're going to see some guys that bring energy, especially if Jaren Stevenson is there. Defensive energy, you're going to see him. You're going to see Powell, who brings defensive energy. Really like the way that he rebounded tonight. But you're not going to see guys coming off the bench that are going to really be able to shoot it. They're not going to be able to have that scoring impact that you're hoping for. And that's really disheartening for Carolina, because it felt like coming into the season, they were going to have a chance to have a bench that would be able to give them that. But I just don't think you're getting enough consistent production from Jonathan Powell. I don't think you're getting enough consistent offensive production from Jaren Stevenson. And then nobody else on that bench. If Derek Dixon is the guy that's going to be the other, linchpin of that bench that's going to be there playing in just about every game, I don't expect him to have some huge offensive explosion out of nowhere. There'll be some games where he'll be able to contribute like he's shown so far early in the season, but I don't think in these big games he's really going to be able to give you a ton. So this bench really is going to be one of the things that Carolina is going to have to navigate throughout the season and hope to find some consistent threats at as they get into conference play, which is not that far off, believe it or not, as we sit here on Thanksgiving.
All right, let's get to the discussion topic, and we'll try to be mindful because it's late on a holiday night. I'm really worried about this offense, really concerned about the offense. You can score against Patsies, that's fine and dandy, but by God, you better. I expect you to. I'm trying to figure out what's the path forward without Trimble. And you were talking about moving Luka Bogovac to the bench. Like, I'm over here thinking, just because I want more shooting, I think you need more rim running ability, more pressure on the rim. I mean, do you even consider putting Stevenson on the bench now and bringing Jonathan Powell into your starting lineup? You're giving up size, and I think that Carolina's size right now is their best attribute. But you Stevenson can't do for you offensively what Jonathan Powell can do. That's just the nature of the way that he's built as a basketball player and the way that Powell is built as a basketball player. But like, I'm sitting here just trying to figure out a way to make it look easier from the perimeter. Just to, okay, we can dump it inside and you're going to do that. And I don't question Carolina's commitment to doing that, because I thought even when they got 3-point happy, I mean, sometimes they just couldn't even get the ball inside because the way that Michigan State was able to take those two guys away. Good thing for Carolina, they're not going to face a team that can do that as frequently as Michigan State was able to do. But, like, what do you see moving forward for Carolina's offense? I mean, I think what will help them Tuesday is you're playing against a team that wants to run. So the game is going to be free-flowing. It's going to be up and down. It'll be played the way Carolina wants to play. But, you know, what's that say for Georgetown? I don't know. Is he going to be back for Ohio State? I don't know. Like, Carolina's going to do fine against ECU, East Tennessee State, USC Upstate. They're going to be fine against those guys. So numbers are going to look great, and it's going to really inflate their numbers. But I think this offense is more of what you saw tonight than what we've seen the majority of the season. And I don't know if there's an easy solution right now without their senior guard.
Oh, that's the thing, right? That's what this offense is without him on the floor. When he's on the floor, it's what it was against Kansas. And that's what hurts really badly, is that, you know, of course, this has to happen this season. You have to have, you know, a year where you're feeling pretty good. You know, you win that game against Kansas and everything seems great. And then all of a sudden he ends up getting injured in a freaking weight room accident. And now, you know, who knows what tonight's game looks like with Seth Trimble in it. I think it looks a lot different. I think, you know, Jeremy Fears would have had a really tough night because Seth Trimble would have been on him. That's your best perimeter defender. I think he would have been able to take away a lot of what he wanted to do. And if you take away his ability to set the offense the way that he was able to, you know, what does that do for Michigan State? Does that change the way everything ends up happening for them? It would have at least allowed Carolina to keep the game closer. So I think when he gets back on the floor, you feel pretty good about where Carolina is going to be at. But for the time being, I mean, yeah, it's setting the, you know, in terms of, you know, for Carolina, what would be the best strategy offensively? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if putting Jaren Stevenson on the bench is going to lead to more success with Jonathan Powell in there. Because the thing is that Jonathan Powell, it's not like he's making a ton of shots from the outside. If he was burning it up off the bench, like if every time that we saw Jonathan Powell, he was hitting 3-4 threes a game, okay, then maybe, yeah, we throw him into the starting lineup because he's really playing better than Jaren Stevenson. But that's not the case. It's a guy that's hitting 1-3 a game for Carolina. And yeah, he was able to rebound pretty well in this game. My counter argument would be there would be times where Jaren Stevenson has rebounded well so far early this season. You know, defensively, Jonathan Powell tonight was pretty good on the defensive end of the floor, at least showed you the effort on the defensive end of the floor that he needed to. Jaren Stevenson had an off night. The other thing about Jaren Stevenson is he's 6'10". So, I mean, you're expecting a lot from him going up against a guy that's as athletic as Cohen Carr is. I wasn't as discouraged tonight by what I saw from him as you were. I thought that was just a really bad mismatch for him because of just how athletic and explosive Cohen Carr is and some of the other guys that they were throwing out. That was the other thing, right, that you were really jealous of. We just talked about our bench. Look at the bench on the other side for Michigan State. I mean, they throw 2, 3, 4 guys into the game that when they come in, they immediately impact the game offensively. They're immediately doing something that's allowing Carolina to be successful or allowing Michigan State to be successful. And that's something that you wish that Carolina had. So for now, I mean, yeah, I think the solution is to have Kyan Evans really start to attack the basket a little bit more. You've got to find somebody that can do that for Carolina right now at that guard spot. And I just don't know that exists right now. And so, yeah, as easy as it is for us to say that, it's going to be hard for Carolina to execute it. That's where you need someone like, yeah, I mean, Kyan Evans, I think, definitely needs to step up in that area. But also, I mean, this is where you were hoping that sort of the veteran leadership, the fact that he is an older player. I mean, he hasn't been around college basketball, but you thought that the veteran leadership that could be brought by Luka Bogovac would really step up in this moment. And so I'm hoping that maybe they can start to find a way to put more pressure on the rim. You mentioned that in this game, with it being a little more free-flowing, maybe Carolina's guards are able to do that because they're out in space. I'm hoping that's going to be the case. The other thing is I'm just hoping that, this is not going to be a great defensive team that they're going to be facing like they faced in this game against Michigan State. Kentucky is not a great defensive team. We saw how many points they allowed to Louisville. You saw how many points they allowed to Michigan State. I think we know that they are a team that is susceptible on that end of the floor, and Carolina is going to have to take advantage of it. But I can't tell you that I am an extremely confident person in what this offense is going to look like, because the strength of this offense right now with Seth Trimble out of the lineup is playing through your post players. And I think that that's going to be the area that Carolina's got to shine. But we've seen now back-to-back games where the opponent has been able to adjust to that. They've thrown different looks at them and forced tough shots from especially Caleb Wilson. So I think that's something that, you're just having a hope. Hey, Caleb makes some tough shots for you. Those shots really start to fall as the season goes along. But more importantly, you're just hoping that the other guys on the team can really step up and be more consistent. And that second part, I'm just not as certain about that. I feel secure in the fact that Caleb Wilson, as the season goes on, may be able to hit some of those more difficult shots because he's just that good of a player. But the other guys, I'm not sure that they're necessarily going to be able to step up, and that's what has me a little bit concerned moving forward.
Yeah, look, the season's not over. This game is not going to define who Carolina is. But it is, I think it's fair to say, when they get back to the Chapel Hill tomorrow, you got to get back to the drawing board. You got to reconfigure some things that you're doing just to get more from your offense, just to get more out of your offense, because they're better than what they've shown. But when you've played as many games as you are, at some point the proof is in the pudding. And look, this was an offense that was rated 37th in KenPom entering tonight's game. Their talent level should suggest it should be I would say a top 15 offense. And they got a ways to go if they want to be that at any point here this season. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast, guys. In the meantime, get over to the website. That's HeelToughBlog.com. Full coverage of today's game can and will be found over there. I had you ready to go with the preview this morning. Wrote the recap right after the game went final this afternoon. So if you haven't read the recap, get over to the website. A little bit more in depth on some of these issues that stood out for the loss for Carolina. And I'll be getting you ready for the game against Kentucky next Tuesday in the ACC SEC Challenge. Anthony has you covered football-wise. Carolina with a bunch of recruiting flips earlier in the week. All those have been documented on the website. And then he'll be getting you ready for the matchup with NC State on Saturday, the regular season finale. So there'll be the game preview. If there's any major news in the availability report, we'll have that up for you. And then, of course, after the game, there'll be a recap as well. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform, just search the Four Corners Podcast and we'll pop up. There, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any editions of the show throughout the remainder of the season. If you're an audio consumer of the podcast, best way to keep up with us, or a video consumer, is to like and follow the Facebook page at Heel Tough Blog, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Heel Tough Blog, or follow me at Twitter, HTB_Josh. The second we go live, you'll be notified. You can jump right in and be a part of the conversation, like Jill Marie Brown, Teddy Miller, Greg Ward, Myron Goodman, so many others have been doing so tonight. But with that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. I do want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank you guys for both watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.